Hi everyone, I'm Karen Wolfe,
I'm Jerrica Danhoff.
and we're child therapists in San Francisco and Oakland. And when this pandemic started to, when it became a pandemic, we realized the need for tele play therapy, and so we don't have experience. I have a little bit of experience. I've done some FaceTime calls with, a little bit older kids, but we just put our heads together and we scoured all of the information that we were able to find, and put some ideas together about considerations for doing teleplay therapy and some ideas about how you might use it with little kids, with elementary age kids, with families, doing a little bit around doing parent-child work, and some of the ethical and clinical considerations that we were thinking of. So this is really just sort of a work in progress as a response to what we're all up against as play therapists at this time. And so we are just wanting to prepare ourselves and see if we could help you all. So as you watch this, please, offer in any of your input. If you have experience or if you get experience throughout the next week or two, if you have questions, then we can just put our heads together on how we can support one another. Add anything?
I think you pretty much said everything. Yeah, we really worked hard just to scour everything that we could kind of think of to offer as resources for us and you. So we hope that some of this is helpful, and yeah, please ask questions or comments or add anything that you found to be really helpful.
Yeah.
Because we don't know what the coming weeks are going to be like. So we might be doing this for a while.
Right. Okay, so we're going to share our presentation now. So let me go to sharing that. Okay. Make it play. Okay, so we're calling this parent-child tele play therapy because the parents are going to have to be involved in some way. So first thought is just some clinical considerations that we could think of. One is creating the virtual playroom for you and for your client, and we'll go through each of these. Therapeutic interactions over the video and phone, and ethical guidelines. So creating the virtual playroom. So if you are not in your therapy office, then can you find some sort of quiet and private space? Maybe it's just a corner of your bedroom that is like your virtual office. Maybe you even set it up in the bathroom. I've known people who've done that. Or can you be in your play therapy office, even if you're seeing your clients remotely? So some tools to have on hand might be things like an emotion chart, Jenga tower, or other games or board and card games that you might use in your regular play therapy, balloons, sand tray and figures, puppets and stuffies, and art supplies. There are things that we are realizing that you could do, even though it's virtual, that you can still play in some of the same ways. So we'll go over those, I believe, a little bit later. Yeah, we will. So the child's playroom. So you're going to have to work with the parent to set up their play space. And I took some ideas that other people had and kind of modified them. And I set up a whole letter for parents that I emailed them this week. If you want that, please do feel free to email me, KarenWolfeTherapy@gmail.com. I'm happy to send you whatever I created on working with the parent. So you're going to have to work with the parent on setting up their play space. That you'll have to discuss with them a toy kit, the location of their session, potential interruptions, time scheduling. There may be a period of limit testing at home, and complaint about the toy selection. So to help parents to anticipate that. And what you might do and just pop in if I'm, what you might do is just have the parents sort of create the kit in a separate bin. That way it's just available for them.
Yeah, I feel like families have found that helpful, just as, the coming weeks, just sort of start gathering different items from these different categories and putting it in a bin, a bag, it could be a trash bag, it could be anything, just so that way they kind of have it ready to go for when the session is going to start, so they can, set it all up for the child.
So basic things that you'd want for the parents to have, it could be helpful for them to have a list. Art, so tell them paper, markers, maybe some tape, crayons, pencils, something for imaginative play, dolls, cars, stuffies, puppets, figurines, dress up, something for aggression and movement, balloons, pillows, or a couch. I heard someone say just having them have army guys available just to work out aggression is helpful. Having them have some of their games around, cards or board games, things for mastery like Legos and puzzles, and stuff for sensory input like Play-Doh. I also think just having some of their favorite toys or family photos around can be a helpful something I have done with a adopted client, as we had to have a phone session or a video session one day, and she was able to show me her baby picture. And it was, elicited this conversation that we really weren't able to have before, because it was just sort of right there in the face. She was giving me a tour of her room. So especially right now when people are completely out of their routine and they're anxious, but even if this becomes something that you do on a regular basis, having a list for people I think is really helpful, even if it seems basic, to have parents have something specific that they can look at.
And there's also some low or no cost toy substitutions that we added in here that I think could be really useful, such as making a dollhouse with a cardboard box and having little dividers in it. It could be paper dividers. I mean, it could be anything. Parents and you could kind of get really creative with coming up with different things. Making a doll family using clothespins or other things around the house and gluing little things on. Maybe they have little googly eyes, just different things. Furniture, using little blocks of wood that are lying around. Puppets, you can use an old sock with some yarn and you have a puppet, right? So there's a bunch of different things you can do. A bop bag, having an old pillowcase and letting them or you draw a neutral face on the cover, right? Maybe having the parent do it in the coming weeks. And then just any other household items that you can think of that might be useful, to kind of create some of these different categories of toy options for your client.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then just thinking about therapeutic interactions over video and phone, a lot of this I got from Lisa Dion, Dion. She has a podcast about teleplay therapy, and she says she's been doing it for years, and she always sees clients in person at first. But something that I thought was really useful from that was that you do need a heightened presence and attunement from the therapist in order to regulate the client and create containment. And I found that myself when I've done video sessions, even with adults. You really, there's no one in the room with you, and so your presence needs to be much more heightened so that you can attune to what's happening to them. And also, what do you need to do in between sessions to stay present, or during? How do you need to move? How do you need to stretch? Do you need to go outside for 2 minutes in between sessions? Do you need to stand up during the session? Make sure you close all the other tabs, turn off your notifications. Like, how do you stay present and in your body when you're using a modality that might lend itself to you feeling like you need to be stiff? So it's really important that you're able to figure out what you need so that you can stay present and attuned. And, you'll have to take extra care to notice their nonverbals. Nonverbals is such a huge part of therapeutic attunement. You'll be able to notice a bit of their body language and tone of voice, but know that you will miss cues that are below the waist. For example, if you're talking with a parent and their foot is tapping because they're nervous, you're not gonna catch that. So one thing that Lisa suggests is that you can ask, what's happening with your feet as we talk, or what's happening with your hands. And she also talks about encouraging clients to move, to stand, to breathe, to really stay in their bodies. I think that's more for adults, but just keeping in mind that we, even though we're using video, we don't have to be just sitting and stuck. I also do want to say we have as an aside, we do have one participant on this sort of beta testing of this training right now. And her name is Hannah. She's an associate in my practice, SFA Play Therapy. And so she may be asking questions. So Hannah, the way that technology is working right now is actually, if you have a question, just go ahead and unmute yourself. Maybe save up a few of your questions, and when it seems like a good pause, unmute yourself and just ask, because we actually can't see the chat. This is one of the things that you're going to work out in doing technology sessions with clients, is there's going to be kinks that we're not familiar with. And we have a colleague who's going to be putting out a training too, Rachel Altvader. But she talks about just staying calm and knowing that you'll be able to sort of troubleshoot or deal with the situation, that we can get so anxious if something doesn't go right. It's like, it's okay. It's just a new issue, and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, and I also really like something else that Rachel said or recommended, and just as a reminder, is that kids, the technology is their world. There's a lot of things that we don't want that to be the case, right? We have opinions about that, but they're so immersed in technology and video games and all of that I've had kids that are actually really excited to do something like this over video. So I think it was a good reminder for me of like, oh yeah, that's true. Like, they're really tech savvy, and they're like, oh, I get to show you around my room, stuff like that. So it's also just, it helped kind of ease my sort of worry about this transition, just knowing that kids can be excited about this, and they might actually really love this.
Yeah. And I think, after we talk a bit about some of the interventions that we can do with kids, we can talk about how do you work with the parents that are resistant. It's like the kids may be into it, but we have some resistance because it's new to us and we're afraid or we're not sure, right? So we're working through our resistance, but then we may have worked through ours and get, this is kind of actually a cool opportunity. But then parents are saying, well, my child can't even have a productive, I had a parent email today saying, well, we need to cancel this week because our child can't have a productive FaceTime conversation with relatives. And so there's some psychoeducation that's going to need to happen. It's like, that's not actually what's going to happen. It's just a phone conversation. There's going to be activities that we're going to do. It's a lot more, one of the things I'm learning through watching some of other people's videos is that teletherapy is far more directive. There's a lot more, it's more directive play therapy. And so working with parents directly, my plan is to call that parent later today and just tell her, well, here's exactly how I think that we can make it work. And here's how you can set up the space and you can be present. And here's what we're going to do so that it is effective. So to be willing to psychoeducate parents and put in that little bit of extra effort to give them a call, because they're probably nervous about changing too. This isn't necessarily what they signed up for. And again, even if this is something that you start to go to use in your regular practice, you're going to have to be able to psychoeducate parents on how it's helpful. So these are just some considerations for you guys, therapeutic interactions, and then some ethical guidelines. So, this was from the CAMP, California Guidelines for Telehealth, that you have to inform your client of the potential risks and limitations of receiving treatment via telehealth. So I had a colleague, Robin is her first name. She's on the Teleplay Therapy resources and support group, offer this informed consent. So I took out names and I just put it as a open shared Google Doc. So if you go to this link, that's a link for an online consent. You can use it, you can modify it. I modified it a little bit. If you want mine, you can email me and I can show you how I modified mine. The other thing that's important to know is down there in the smaller print is each time that we provide services by telehealth, we have to verbally obtain the client's name and where they are at the beginning of each session in case there was some sort of emergency. So we just have to always say, just ask where they are, make sure we know their address. If they're at grandma's house and we don't have grandma's house on file, then we need the address of that when we're doing telehealth. And obviously they have, or maybe it's not obvious, but they have to be in your same state. You have to assess whether they're appropriate for telehealth, including in that current situation. You know, maybe you get on, maybe their child that is it would be effective to do teletherapy, but in that moment they're going to be too uncontained. So you have to assess if it's appropriate. And then use just best practices to ensure confidentiality and security of the communication, which basically means using a HIPAA compliant platform. And with the explosion due to the health necessity of doing telehealth, you know, many of us were using Zoom before for sessions here or there, but it's not HIPAA compliant unless you purchase the BAA, which is like, I think it's like $200. So there's a couple good HIPAA compliant platforms. Doxy.me, a lot of people like, excuse me.
That one I did hear did crash recently because of, you know, the overload of so many therapists now moving to telehealth. That was what I was going to use, so I've had to do something else. And so now we're getting ready to use the Simple Practice video with our clients in hopes that that continues to work. Yeah, so
if you have Simple Practice, they have a telehealth option, and it's incredibly easy. The connection is really good, and you can share your screen. We're going to talk about screen sharing. The other piece ethically to think about is just scope of competence, right? So most of us haven't had training in this. We're creating our own training for ourselves. This is how we're training ourselves, what we're teaching you guys. But just in the same way that when we took child therapy in grad school, or you know, when we do workshops now, we role play to figure it out. You want to do that also with telehealth. So have a role play teleplay therapy session with a colleague. Mm-hmm. So that's it.
Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about just kind of the beginning of what a session would look like, and just things to keep in mind. You know, I think the first thing is kind of creating the container. You know, so when you start the video session, you may end up talking to the parent for the first 15 minutes, or maybe the last 15 minutes of a given session, right? Maybe they need a little bit of parenting support, so kind of assessing for that as well. And they will also need to be available for tech issues, right? I mean, depending on the age of the child, if the connection gets lost, or, you know, something pops up and they don't know what to do, they have to be available for their child to work those issues out. And then again, as Karen said, you must ask, where are you right now? You know, they need to have the full location and address. You kind of already went over the other things. And then the next thing would be to start with a ritual each time to really set the tone for that particular session. And something that we use a lot are these really great little emotional tools called kimochis. And they're these little pillow guys, and they have faces and they have feelings on the back. And so we'll often have a client pick a couple at the beginning of, you know, just to kind of have a weather check-in, like, how did you feel this week? And, you know, I think you could do that with pulling up a emotion board and then sharing it, or if you have one, you can just put it up to the screen. I mean, I think there's a lot of ways to work with that, but just to start with a check-in, start with something that they know is going to be consistent during this time. And then the other option would be to, you know, start with the parent and talk about bright spots, you know, like what's going well this week for you or your family, and then what's one thing or two things that have been kind of challenging this week. And again, just assessing for the possibility of parent support either in the beginning or at the end, depending on how things were that week for the child and the family.
Yeah, so when children come to your therapy office, it's sort of it's already set up as a different time and space. It's outside, when we talk about play therapy, we talk about it as outside of regular time and space. It's sacred space. And so when we're just turning on a video, how do we create that? How do we create that same sort of container, like this, something different is going to happen right now. This isn't going to be just your everyday, what you've been doing throughout the whole day. So having a ritual that you do each time, and also you coming with that attitude of, oh, this is something different, where you're going to be having to bring that to them because they're going to be in their regular everyday space. It's not going to be the same sort of brain associations that we make when we're by being in a new place. When you're in when you come to a place each time, your brain starts associating the physiological experiences that you have with that space. So now they're in their own home and there's a lot of different experiences that they have. So you have to bring the therapeutic container through your energy, through your presence, and through something ritualistic that you have them do each time. If you have them do kimochis, or pick 3 feelings that they've had. Someone on the thread asked me, or had a question for all of us, what are 3 feelings that you've been having lately about everything? And then what are 3 ways that you want to feel about that? So that's something I haven't tried with kids, but you can come up with what works for you, but whatever it is, to have something that's a consistent way of engaging. Now, I do want to say one thing about the bright spot. When we have parents involved, and this is true whether it's in person or in teletherapy, they're stressed out, so they're going to start offloading all of their stresses through their complaints of their children, or maybe even their fears, and they may overload their kids. So having parents talk about what's going well in their life with their family, and also just sort of sweet moments that they've had together, is really important. It's especially at times of stress. And they may say, well, I don't know. And they may start going into what's challenging, and you can ask them, well, what is a moment that you had that was just fun? Was there a time that you guys felt really connected? It's really important to get them to start to feel those moments of connection before going into what they want to use the session to work on. So that's just sort of the general container, play therapy for kids ages 4 to 12. Set a container, have some sort of ritual. And now we want to talk about specific age groups and what you can do with them. Well, the first thing that you want to do is actually orient to a new way of working. If you haven't done teletherapy before, or if this child hasn't, what you can do is you can say, even though we aren't in the playroom together, this is still your special time. Or if you called it something else, this is still your special play time, or this is still your special feelings time. And we can play just about anything you'd like. And then you orient them, you educate them. Sometimes there'll be activities I'd like us to do. Other times you can lead us. I have some ideas about how we can do that using the computer. Would you like to hear them? Because they may have lots of ideas. This is their world, but they also may not. And they may think, oh, well, this is the time we can just play video games together. Without it being, within the therapeutic container. So orienting them, and you're welcome to use these words exactly. And then you want to orient them to what may need to happen with the computer. Since the computer doesn't have legs or a neck to move, like legs to walk or a neck to look, you may have to bring me with you if you move to another part of the room to help me face you. And this is, going to be more true with the younger kids. You also want to talk to them about tech issues. There may be times that the sound cuts out and I may need you to repeat yourself. This is true with adults too. So could you be patient if I need to ask you to repeat yourself? And then anticipating troubleshooting. If the internet drops, have your parent help you sign in again so that you guys have a plan. So it's really important, I think, to have this orientation for the first couple times. And Hannah, if you have any questions, just go ahead and unmute yourself and jump in. So now we want to talk about non-directive teleplay therapy for kids 4 and older. Yeah, some of the things I've been hearing that it is really hard to engage with non-directive, but I think that there's ways we can do a little bit of it. So I think one thing that's really wonderful is just to invite the child to show you their favorite toys their favorite games and pets, real life pets, any favorite art they have, photos of themselves and their family. You may, if they're real young, you may want to have the parent hold the device while the client shares, and then you can ask them follow-up questions. You know, what is that? Tell me the story of that toy. What are some feelings that toy is having? What are some memories you have of those games? What's something that you like to play with them? What's something you wish you could do right now? How is your pet feeling? Pets are great for projective feelings. You know, what is your dog feeling right now? What is he wanting? What's he afraid of? So you can really use them showing the space to ask questions. You could just have them have paper and pencils out or clay out and just have them draw in the same way that you would witness in the office. You can witness or maybe make some comments. Oh, I see you're working really hard on that right now. Or oh, that person, you know, looks like they're hiding, or, you know, whatever it is that you would do in the office, you can do over teletherapy, but you would want to make sure you can see it.
You can use toys on your end to engage with the toys on their end, you know, so like shared puppet plays or possible dress up, you know, if you both have things to dress up. So that would be still kind of more of a non-directive approach, just to have those things engage with each other. You can have them choose games in your office or your home office, wherever you are, if you have any games available. And if they have any games available, they can pick it on their end. And so, you know, you could have each person take the other turn for each other. So if you had Jenga, you know, for example, then you would each, they would tell you, okay, I want that block. And then, okay, this one, and then they take it out, and then you do it, you know. So we're trying to get really creative here of like, how can you still engage and use games in a fun way for them? And it could be really fun for kids actually to do that, I think.
Yeah. And one suggestion that I heard that's really helpful is you can number. So if you do Connect 4, you can number the columns. So if you're doing Connect 4 for their turn, they can tell you, put it in column 1 or put it in column 2. Mm-hmm. Same with Jenga. You can put numbers on all of the blocks on the side. And we'll show you a Jenga game later. And if they have a game, then they take your turn and you tell them, okay, now pick a card for me. Okay, move mine. And they, you know, you'll still be working on competition and frustration tolerance and rapport and communication, even if you're not doing the game in the same space. One's very simple one is each of you could have a balloon and you just both try to keep it up in the same way you might in the office. And if it falls, then that person's out. You know, just something to bring that game in particular can often bring a lot of joy. It can also bring out working on competition.
Yes, definitely.
Or anger. You know, they may start to get mad, and you can have them take the balloon and, you know, pound it on the ground or, you know, on the wall, or punch it with one hand. Ways to express their aggression, and you may need their parent there to help them blow it up. Right? So to make sure the parent is around.
Some directive teleplay therapy for ages 4 and up. These are some ideas that we put our heads together to come up with and found. So one idea is interactive puppet shows that you could do with your client. So if they don't have puppets, you know, they could use their own stuffed animals to talk and play through their feelings. You know, I grabbed a lot of puppets from my office, and that's one of the big things that I plan on doing with my little kids my little kid clients is to have my puppets interact with their stuffies. And I think there's a lot of things that can come out of doing something like that, and have them talk to each other about how they're feeling, you know, and to play out in that way things that might be happening for them. You can instruct the client to draw their feelings, so having, you know, just some paper, some markers available for them ahead of time, letting their parents know, you know, they could draw lines and shapes and different colors. And again, you can, you know, just say things you're noticing, but you can also instruct them, like, why don't you draw that angry feeling, right? And so they can scribble it on the piece of paper, right? They can draw it out. Another one is bibliotherapy. So if you have any therapeutic books around, you can read them to your client through the screen. Or if you don't have any of your really awesome therapeutic books, then you can find people on YouTube who are reading those. And so you can share screen then and have you watch it together, watch the video and then talk about it, right? And you can pause the video and say like, what do you think about this part? What do you think this person is feeling right now? You know, wow, to really engage in the process of doing something like that.
So some other things that we found that you can do for screen sharing activities are some of these videos. I'll show at least one of them. So the Inside Out, How Is She Feeling video, I'll show that one in a minute. There's this one about guessing emotions, which would be appropriate for ages 4 to 6. And I'd be happy to send you these slides if you can't read the link, or you can just take a screenshot. There's a little clip from the movie Inside Out of when, what's his name, Bilbo, the elephant guy, he loses his little wagon, and he feels very, very sad. And it's maybe a 1.5 minute clip, but it's very emotionally potent. So especially for kids that are resistant to feeling, those kinds of kids that will, maybe avoid emotionally laden books or activities, you could have them watch that video and see if they can tolerate it, see if they can breathe into it, see if it will help them to talk about a time that they felt sad. Because what happens is then sadness comes over and consoles this character, but not through trying to make him feel better, but rather by joining with him with empathy. I found this great one. It's another Inside Out video, the movie Inside Out, dancing it out to different emotions. It's each of the characters, joy, sadness, anger, fear, and disgust, have a different theme song. So it's a way that you can have your, engage your body. So you could start, this could be one of the ways you start your sessions, is you start the session by, you dance it out, each theme is about 1 minute. So you dance it out to the happy song, and then you can feel it in your body, and then you pause it, and okay, tell me about a time that you felt happy, because then they'll have access to that feeling and they'll be embodying that feeling. So that could be a really fun one. And then I'm sure you can then ask them, pick a song over the next week, especially with your teens or tweens, pick a song that shows how you feel, and let's play it and listen to it and move to it, and tell me about a time that you felt that way. There's also this video for kids ages 5 and up on anger, and expressing anger and being with anger and anger management. And these are just some of the good ones that I found, but I'm sure there's so many out there. So I'm gonna show you what screen sharing would look like. So I have to exit the sharing that. So I'm gonna stop the share for a moment and then share with you. This is the Inside Out, actually, to share the video sound. So this is one you could share on how to help kids in thinking about how are they feeling. And we're just sitting here, but with your kids, you'd be doing it with them. Pause it. Did you feel happy this week? Let's watch this next one. So you get the idea, and they go through different ones. So you know, hopefully that just that that example shows you how screen sharing a video can be a really fun and engaging way to do play therapy with kids. I also found this, I don't know how it would work, I haven't tried it yet, but I found this app for really little kids, ages 4 to 5. It's called Think, Do, Breathe, Think, Do by Sesame Street. So you would have to get it on your phone, and then you would do it with them. So it would be something like this, where you would share it with them. Let's see. And then you would push it.
Hola, Mondo from Sesame Street here. Our monster friend's having a tough time.
Basically, this one, it goes through the monster struggling.
This monster is frowning, and his shoulders are all scrunched up. He's feeling frustrated because he tried and tried to put on his shoes, but he just couldn't do it. Tap on the monster's belly to help him put his hands on it.
So if I was doing this with a child, I might say, do your shoulders get all scrunched up? I might turn down the sound for a second. Do your shoulders get all scrunched up when you're irritated? Can you show me? So I'd have them embody it. And then I might say, you know, I wonder if helping the monster breathe will help him to calm down. So I engage with it, and then I might, you know, sort of, and kids love these things. I know kids who will watch videos of people opening toys and playing video games. And so you're just doing that. So then I might say, okay, let's put our hands on our belly. Let's see.
Tap slowly on his belly.
So it keeps going in that way. So that's something I found, and that's free. That's a free app to use. So those are just some directive games that you can play with the real little ones.
And so next we're going to talk about some movement-based directives for teleplay therapy for ages 4 and up. So the first one is you can teach this mindfulness activity that's called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And it's 5 things that you see right then and there in the moment. So 5 things. You can ask the kid, what are 5 things that you see around your room right now, for example, and let them, you know, look for the 5 things. And then it's 4 things that you can feel. So maybe they feel their socks around their ankles, or maybe they feel their soft sweater on their body, you know, so the different things that they can feel. And 3 things that they can hear. So then that requires it to be really quiet so they can really tune in to that sense, to their hearing. Like, what can I hear right now? 2 things that they smell, and then 1 thing that they taste. And so this is something that you can do with, I think, any age. I actually offer this as a really helpful tool for my adult clients as well. So I think it's kind of across the board, it can be helpful. Next is self-regulation games, which I think can definitely be done in telehealth. So you could do what's called red light, green light, yellow light, and purple light. So green light means go. So that means that they can like race really fast or like move their body really fast. Red means stop. So that's them having to have control, right, to be able to completely stop. It's almost like freezing. And then yellow means to go in slow motion. So I really, really emphasize this one of like going slow, because kids tend to like still go fast because it's so hard to like really slow down. But I think it's important to really emphasize that, and you could do it with them, right? So that way you're modeling it for them. And then purple, I have purple always mean do a silly dance, which kids tend to like. So there's many options that you can use with the purple light. You can change it up. Next is the freeze game. So the child and or the therapist can dance to a song, can be any song, and then freeze once the music stops, right? And that's again helping with getting their body moving, and also then the regulation and the stopping. I have to stop, and I have to have that self-control stopping, which can be really hard for kids to do. Next is to create a calm down corner. So if they're working from their bedroom, you can, you know, help them think of like, what are the things that make you feel safe, that help you feel safe? You know, is it getting a bunch of pillows, getting your favorite blankies, stuffed animals, any other toys, you know, anything. Maybe they have a weighted blanket or a weighted stuffed animal that they really like. Anything to help them feel safe and calm, to kind of create that space for themselves in their room. And then you can.
So the worry stone activity is something I haven't tried, but I heard about, and it sounds like a great idea. Is just have them find a stone from outside or in their backyard that's a worry stone, and have them place it in their room to show what they're feeling worried about, and to talk about it, and to talk about how the worry stone can then take their worries. Now, at this point, I might imagine that some of you are feeling overwhelmed, like, oh my God, I have to learn all of these things all at once. And what I would suggest is just use all of this as a resource. I know we're all taking a crash course in teleplay therapy right now, and you don't have to memorize all of it. But what I would suggest is to pick out a few things that speak to you. And we can send these slides, and you can screenshot it, print it out, and then just you're gonna have to do more planning for your sessions, or maybe you already do plan for your sessions. But just I would pick 2 to 3 things that you're gonna do with a child, and you may not even need to. You know, as we all know, therapy evolves in the moment. But you might just pick 2 or 3 things. I've done this when I've been learning trying out different interventions. I'll pick an intervention, and I'm just going to try that in as many sessions that week as is appropriate and as I can. That way I learn it, not trying to do something different in every single session, unless the child needs it. So, you know, maybe you're going to do the, you know, how is she feeling video. Maybe you'll do the red light, green light. And then maybe you'll have them show you their room and their toys, and talk about the toys, and be ready to do some interactive, non-directive, you know, kind of pretend play games. So just pick a few things that you might do for a session to plan it out ahead of time. One thing I do also want to say that we don't have this in our slides, but that if you have worksheets that you do with kids, or, you know, like the pictures of the sort of gingerbread men that you'd have them color in, you can send them to the parents ahead of time and have them printed out, so that the child is sitting down with exactly the thing that you want them to be sitting down with at the time for the therapy. So to be willing to email worksheets for parents to print out ahead of time. So a little bit more directive teleplay therapy with kids 4 and up, and Jerrica, you can speak to these.
Mm-hmm. So the first one is what we're going to call animal emotions. And so this would be, you know, if a child chooses or tells you about a feeling that they're having that week, maybe they're feeling angry about something, and then you would act it out with them. You know, I think kids really like when I act it out with them. So it's like, okay, so you're feeling really angry this week, so why don't we growl like a bear? And you're just like, "Arr!" And you start growling with them, and then to really embody that, right? Like, why don't we start walking like a bear? Would the bear stomp? You know, how would the bear act? So you could do that with any emotion, right? And you could have a lot of fun with that. And I think kids would really enjoy it. They do in the office, so I imagine it would be really extra silly over video for some. Next is to guide the child to choose a stuffed animal that they have access to represent each person in their family. So maybe the gorilla is dad, and the zebra is mom, and the baby bird is my brother, you know, and then allow them to express their feelings to each of those stuffed animals. So, you know, what do you want to say to the gorilla this week? You know, maybe something didn't feel good in an interaction that they had with their dad or their mom or their sibling, and then they can express that with the stuffed animal, and then you're there to help facilitate the conversation and allow them to get those feelings out and to process them with you. And next is to instruct the client to choose a stuffed animal for each of their parts, so their different parts inside of them or their feelings that are present, and then help facilitate a conversation with them. So, maybe there's a part that feels really worried or scared about everything that's happening in the world, right? And to have them pick a stuffed animal. Maybe they pick the lion, and the lion is really, really scared this week. So it's like, can we have a conversation with that lion, with that part of you? I think there's a lot of different ideas to work with that.
So now just thinking, just a little sort of shout out to parent-child teleplay therapy with kids 4 and up. And we have a colleague, Kathy Buys, who's going to create a whole presentation on how you would do this, a step-by-step process. I think others might be working on it with Reese Van Fleet as well, although I'm not sure. But this is, you would teach the parent how to play therapeutically with their child. So it would be a combination of parent-child interaction therapy and filial. So in parent-child in PCIT, the parent actually has a little bug in their ear, and the therapist is telling them what to do or say. So this is perfect for teleplay therapy, because you may have, it's almost like you're sitting. So many parents want us to observe at home, but we can't do it. Bedtime routine or doing playtime in the morning, and we're not able to. But with this, we could. You could set up the video, and there's a step-by-step process to get to this point. But once you go through the tools with the parent, and you do a little bit of modeling in another session with the parent, then you can have the parent playing with the child, and they have a little their earbuds in, if they have Bluetooth ones, or maybe they just carry you around on their phone, and have one of their earbuds in, and then you can give them little coaching in the moment. So in a way, this is an exciting option to teach parents how to attune to their children therapeutically in a way that we couldn't do before. That they're actually in their homes where the challenge happens. So for parent-child therapy, you would begin the session talking with the parent, make sure the play space is set up. Then you might do some connection with the child for 10 to 20 minutes. Some of these activities that we have already listed, especially with real little ones, I don't think that it's feasible to expect them to do a session with you, even if it's totally directive, for more than 20 minutes. And I don't know, because I don't have that experience yet, but I just cannot imagine it for even a 5-year-old. So that you'll have a little bit of time with them on your own, but that then the rest of the session is dedicated to parent-child therapy. And there'd be some setup that you would need to do for this in talking with the parent, but just that this can be a really wonderful, option for parents, especially for those that are struggling with certain transitions or chores or dinner or that sort of thing.
Karen?
Yes.
Hi.
Hey, Hannah.
I have a quick question about that. So what if the parents have 2 other children, and but my main client is their 6-year-old, for example? What do we turn it into, family therapy, or does one parent spend time with my client and the other parent is with the other kids? What would that look like?
That's a great question. We are going to talk about some family teleplay therapy options.
Okay.
But if that's not what's indicated, if what's indicated is not family therapy, but therapy for this child, then, and if it's a 2-parent home, or there's someone in the home who can watch the other children, then I would, just in the same way that maybe one of the parents is bringing that child to the therapy office, you have to think of it in that same way. That okay. One parent is going to be watching the other kids while the other parent does a therapy session with the child. And they try to find, this is kind of going back to those clinical considerations at the beginning, where they want to try to find a private space. So you may need to do some setup with the parent you know, where maybe you have a child session set up this week, but you're realizing you need to actually talk with the parent or parents on their own first to talk through this new adjustment, and that you're going to do some parent-child teleplay therapy, and that you're going to coach them on how to connect with their child. And there is a lot of research, and hopefully Kathy or whoever does the presentation on the video-based PCIT and filial-esque therapy will talk about some of that, but there is a lot of research that shows that this kind of therapy can help kids with aggression and distraction tendencies, and emotionally acting out and difficult behaviors, uncooperative behaviors. So even though the parent may be kind of wanting you to do something with their kid, to fix their kid, so to speak, you can talk about how working with them, with their relationship in this way has been shown to help with those challenges. And so then have a session with the parent, talking through that, psychoeducating them on that, and then talking through how the session is going to go. You know, I'm going to talk with you first. I'm going to do a little bit of, you know, play with your child. I'll need you there to hold the video. And then we're going to have you playing with your child, and I'm going to be watching, or the next time I'm going to be coaching.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for asking.
Mm-hmm.
So now I want to give some suggestions for directive teleplay therapy for a little bit older kids. And these are just suggestions again. If you have things you've tried or ideas that you have, please share them. So one game that I play in the office is modified Jenga. So I have my Jenga blocks, and then I write numbers on them. You can see in this picture, I write numbers 1 through 4 on the blocks. On the sides, I'm also now going to write. I'll probably do alphabet letters. I'll have to think about that, or maybe I'll do numbers, because I don't know if there's only 36 blocks. But then you set up the tower, and then you would have the kid tell you which one to push for their turn. So say they have you push block number A, or block letter A, if you do letters, and then you take it out, and then, oh, it's a 1. Okay, so then a 1 is you're going to answer an ungame question number 1, if you have the ungame questions. Or you could write out questions on your own. The ungame questions are just, they're a card game that has some fun and some emotionally evocative questions. But you could have a list of questions, and then you would pick it for them. Okay, so this is the question that you ask. So, and then if you get a 2, or if you get a 2, then you have to answer the number 2 question, which tend to be a little deeper. If they get a 3, or you get a 3, then that person talks about an emotion that you felt recently, or maybe you acted out. 4 is fun to do a physical challenge, like hop on one foot and sing happy birthday for 30 seconds, or do a cartwheel. Or, kids really love it when they love getting physical challenges, and they love giving them as well. And then when they answer these questions, you can also use them as, topic starters to engage. So that would be a game that you would have set up, and then they would tell you where to pick. And so if you guys try that, I'd love to hear what works, what doesn't work, how you modified it to help them get engaged, if there was any difficulties keeping them attended. Again, it's not something I have tried on teletherapy, but that I imagine could work. Another thing I've done in the office that I imagine could work well for teleplay therapy is a motion egg hunt. Now maybe they don't have these Easter eggs, but that they can choose 4 toys that represent different emotions that they have felt, and then have them show you the toys so you know what you're looking for, but not tell you the emotion. So they pick the 4 toys, but have them not tell you the emotion. Then you close your eyes or turn away, and they hide them in different places in the room. And then you have to have them carry the computer around the room while you direct them where to go. So you might say, okay, take me to the left. Am I getting warmer or colder? Or maybe you just have it set up, and you have them move around, and you say, okay, left, right, hot, and they can tell you if you're getting hot or cold. And then when you find one, then the child will share that emotion and what they felt. So that's a way to get them kind of more in their space too, and more embodied. Other directive teleplay therapy games that you could play over video. So this is one I just came up with last week, is a friend genogram. So in the same way that you might have a kid do a genogram for their family, a lot of the children, in particular the little girls that I see, kind of 8, 9, 10-year-olds, there's a lot of difficult friend dynamics. This is what I see. So you could have them draw out the way that they perceive the social hierarchy. So who in your friend group seems like they're more of the leader? And when I talk about this with kids, I say, well, it's not that they're actually the leader, but that there's these hidden rules in groups. And I even will tell them, there's actually whole classes on group psychology and the way that people tend to fall into certain roles. And there's almost always someone that's kind of the leader. There's always someone that's kind of the scapegoat, the one that people complain about, and it can switch around. So I just get them to be thinking about, okay, so who's the one that's like the biggest, or maybe it's you. And then who's next, and who's next to them, and who's closest to each other. Or maybe you have them choose toys instead of drawing them out, who would be who, where would they be standing, almost like structural family therapy, except for using with their friend group. And then you could have them list 3 qualities for each of their friends, which is a way to help them express and explore what they're feeling about their friend. So it might be, I had one little girl share, one of the girls, she said she was smart, nice, and bossy. It's like, okay, well, what does that mean? So we explored that, and, she likes her, but she also gets frustrated by her because she's kind of controlling things. Or she feels like she is. So that can be a really great thing. You just have them, draw it or pick toys, and you direct it over the video. Another one is family thought bubbles. This is from a training, a Leona Lowenstein training that I went to once, and she sourced it by Trudy Post Sprunk. And what this would be is that you have the child draw or pick figures for each of their family members, and then write down or say, depending on their writing ability. I work with a lot of kids with dyslexia, and they don't feel comfortable writing. Maybe they dictate and you write it. You can take notes for any of these things. And you don't have to ask them all of these questions, but these are questions that you could ask them. What are funny things that this family member says? What's a funny thing your mom says? What's a funny thing your dad says? What's a funny thing brother says? Okay. What's a feeling that they most often have? What are things they worry about? What are things that you believe they want to say but can't? We call this the unsaids. So what is something that you think mom really wants to say, but she's not saying? What's something that you really want to say, but you can't say? And then what would make it easier for them to say what they're wanting to say? You say something each of them thinks about a lot. How does each of them express anger? You could do this with any emotion. How does mom express when she's sad? How does dad express when he loves you? How do you express when you're feeling needy? Right? And you could do that for each of them. What would be the perfect vacation for each member? So just, interspersing some sort of light questions. How do each of them cope with their worries, or how do each of them cope with their anger, etc. You can also do this in a family session. And what the client wishes each would say to him or her, right? So what do you wish that dad would tell you? What do you wish that you could say to brother, right? You could do it, either way. So the family thought bubbles is, and when you're drawing it, there's usually, so you could send this out, you could create it and send it out as something they print out, and where there's just little stick figures, and then there's sort of a thought bubble over each of them. And you could send out, say you want to do 4 of these questions. So you send them that, and you tell them to print 4. And then they maybe they color in the picture for the person, and then they write it on each one. Or you could just have them write it or say it. Right?
And something else that I think can be really useful, whether it's working with just one-on-one with a child or with a family, similar to the friend genogram, you could also have them do a family genogram with different figures that they have. Maybe they have action figures or little dolls or something, things in their room, toys in their room, or household items, anything that could represent each one of their family members. And so it gets them thinking about like what would be representative of my dad or my mom or my sister or my brother. And then also then asking to find something in their room or in their house that represents the relationship between each of those people. So that gets a lot of conversation going, right? Like depending on what they pick and how they feel each relationship is. Yeah. And there's a lot that can come of those activities.
Right. So there's also a screen sharing. You can screen share this. So some of the things that we screen shared before, any of those that we showed you for the 4+-year-olds, you can use with a 6-year-old. You can do the dancing out your emotions or the how to deal with anger with the older kids for sure. But there's this program called Go Zen, and I'm actually going to pull it up for you all to see, so forgive me while I get it. But Go Zen is a CBT-based online program, and it does cost. There is a fee, but it takes you through these different strategies for dealing with anxiety. It's more than just anxiety. There's coping skills. There's I think there's an anger management program. I've just been doing the anxiety one. It's a whole module. So what you do with Go Zen is you share the video, and then there's questions that you answer, and then there's homework that they do, and you could definitely send them PDF. So I'll just share on YouTube. There's a sort of a few of their videos. So I'll show you, I'll just show you this one about the 4-7-8 breathing, or part of it anyway. So let me go to screen share, just so you get a sense of what it is. And this can be a whole program that you do with kids. I mean, if you do the whole program, you could do this entire program, and you would be doing it. Each module actually could take up to 45 minutes to an hour, and there's a lot of modules. So maybe you do just a little bit each time, or maybe it's what you do with them for 12 weeks or more. So here is, I haven't actually seen this particular video, but let's see.
All right, class, let me ask you something. When you're nervous or afraid, what is your breathing like?
I guess I breathe faster.
Yeah, me too.
Yup. Right, you tend to take short, quick, shallow breaths that make you feel worse. Well, today I'm going to teach you how to take long, slow, deep breaths that will help you calm down when you feel nervous or afraid. And if you practice this breathing exercise regularly, you will be able to train Whittle to be calmer.
Oh, I like the sound of that.
This is called
program. They talk about the worry part of the brain as Whittle, and the thinking part of the brain as Till, and they're actual characters in the videos. And the idea is that these aliens from a utopian society have realized that Whittle is overreacting everywhere on Earth, that Whittle, the worry part of the brain, is getting kids to feel worried about so much, and then that shuts down Till, which is the thinking part of the brain. So when he just said Whittle, he was talking about, here's a way to calm Whittle down. So that's what they talk about. So then they go through the 4-7-8 breathing. I won't take us through it, even though it would feel nice, but you get the idea. So this is a program, if you wanted to invest in it right now, that could be helpful for you or your organization in doing directive teleplay therapy. Okay. And it's a CBT activity.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about some tele-family therapy ideas that you could do if you are working with a family. So the first one is emotion charades. So you could have the family write down feelings on small pieces of paper, just a bunch of different feelings, fold them up, and then have them take turns acting out the feelings to have the family members guess what that feeling is. Like maybe they're acting out sad, and so then they get to have a time to connect and to also for the kids to learn about feelings, right? And to know and to just have a deeper understanding of like, oh, there's so many different ways that sadness could look or anger could look, right? So that's a good one for family therapy. Next is something that I learned from Eliana Gill, which I just went to a training with her, and it's called solution circles. So you could have the family do this on paper or a poster board where you'd have them draw 2 circles. So you'd have them draw a smaller one inside and then a bigger one on the outside. And on that inside circle, you ask the family to use, miniatures or to draw or write words to show the problem, the worry, the concern, or the tragedy in that smaller circle. And on the outside circle, they think of steps that they can take towards resolving that problem, issue, or concern. So, I think you could do this with the virus. You could have, yes, there's a lot of feelings about this, right? And maybe families are feeling a lot. And so they could put that in the smaller circle, right? All the things to represent how they feel about it. And then in the outside circle, there's a lot of things right now that are not in our control, right? But what is in our control? What is in the family's control? What can they do to help themselves stay safe and to feel safe and calm and secure at home? To get them thinking about that. And the idea is that there's all this stuff that might be crammed in that smaller circle, but then you see that there's actually a lot of stuff in that bigger circle, which is pretty great for them to see.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
With that activity, do you have them just choose one problem? Or do you say like choose one problem or?
Yeah. So, well, I think that could be helpful. You could do multiple circles in different sessions and stuff, but I think it would be most helpful to really get them thinking about one specific thing, right? So thinking about the virus or possibly maybe, there was a fight that happened in the family. So we're talking about that, right? There's a lot because there's going to be different feelings for every single family member. So they all get to put stuff in that little circle, that smaller circle, the problem or the worry. And then they get to think about little steps to take towards resolving that, in the bigger circle, which helps them getting to thinking of a solution, right? And to talking through with each other. And so questions that you can ask in regards to thinking of the solution are things like, what's helped in the past, to resolve something like this that's happened in your family? Who is a resource? Who is a resource for this family? What is the safest step to take, right? That could be really useful right now. How to take that step safely, thinking through, helping the family think through it. So that was one that was really amazing that I learned about that I think could be useful and totally doable over telehealth with families. Next is if the family has access to balloons, having them do the balloon game, which is having, parents might have to help out with blowing up the balloons, but blow up some different colored balloons if they have it. It doesn't have to be different colors. It can be helpful though. And you instruct family members to draw or write. We often use Sharpies to write the feelings on the balloons, right? So you might write sad and then you draw the sad face. And so maybe blue represents sad and then red represents anger. And so the goal of this game is to keep all the balloons up in the air. So they're all working together. They're moving around. They're moving their bodies. I've never had a situation where family members haven't laughed during this activity. It's very silly. It's a connecting activity for them to do together. And so when one balloon falls, whatever one hits the ground first, then we stop the game for a moment, and then each family member goes around and shares a time that they felt that way. maybe sadness dropped on the ground. So then each person's going to describe a time when they felt sad. It's not only connecting, but it also gets them to know more about their family members and their experiences and feelings.
Yeah, can I add another way to do that game? Another way that I've seen that works well, that could be really important right now when families are on top of each other and so stressed out, is each family member blows up a balloon, and if they don't have balloons, they could do it with paper plates. There may be other things that they can do. I'm just thinking of, for those of us that are doing shelter in place right now, if they can't go out and buy a balloon, what they could use. But, maybe they toss a ball. I'm not sure. We'd have to think through it. But paper plates definitely would work. And you have them delineate each balloon or paper plate as a something they're dealing with. So it may be like figuring out work and space. Each person gets one thing, or I'm taking the dog out for a walk, or making dinner, or taking care of myself. And so with the balloons, you keep them up, and then they're all trying to help keep them up. Or with the paper plates, they try and, they're trying to spin them, and they are trying to help each other to keep them up. And then what you do is you add another one. So you might add the virus. Or you might, if they already put in the virus, you might say, people get into an argument, and then what you see is that it's really hard for them to, they're all working together to try to keep them all up. And what often happens is they find that they have to, first of all, work together, that they're not just in charge of their own balloon or plate anymore, and that oftentimes something gets dropped. And so, asking them, what do you notice? What do you notice when we add this other thing in? How does that feel to you when we add this other one in? And does it give you any ideas about what you can do? And oftentimes what families will say is, the idea that it gives us is we need to slow down. We need to work together. We need to be willing to put down work in order to take care of each other's emotions. If they don't say taking care of each other's emotions, I will often put that in there in some way. So that's another modification.
Yeah, and then some other ideas are kids versus adults games. Whether there's more than one child or just one child, it can often be really fun for kids, and also bonding for siblings. If there's friction, which I imagine during this time there probably will be a lot, or sibling rivalry that comes out of this. So having them be on a team together, and the parents on a team together, and sometimes having the parents be a little bit more fumbly and less, what's the word? Less.
For the parent to be in the less powerful role.
Yeah, less powerful role. Exactly. But I often do pillow fights or sword fighting, anything that they have. Most people will have pillows available, right? So maybe they could do a pillow fight together. That could be a really connecting thing to do for families.
And you could tell them, okay, now we're going to have part of our session on the biggest bed in the house. So everyone go to the biggest bed and get a pillow. And now it's going to be kids versus grown-ups. And then if you haven't talked with the grown-ups about it ahead of time, which is ideal, but if you're not able to, you can just kind of give them a heads up by, what I would often say is, okay, now it's going to be kids versus grown-ups, and the grown-ups always lose. And I'll say it just like that. And the parents kind of get it and say, because kids are so strong. And if parents are very resistant, then you would talk about it. You could even say in the session, I would say it, everyone is stressed out and kids feel really helpless right now. So that's why, parents they're just not strong enough for these kids, so I'll do a little education and then I'll make it playful again as a way to give the parents a heads up that you're not going to be holding them down and tickling them. And I always say no tickling is not allowed. So that can be a really fun way to just release some of the tension that families are dealing with.
And then last is physical games. So something like Simon Says, or having them play hot potato, where it could be a pillow, and it's hot potato. And so putting on some music, and when the music stops, then whoever has the hot potato, is out, or something like that, to just have a little bit of a physical game for the family to play. Red light, green light can be played with families as well. That's something that I talked about earlier. And also musical chairs is something that a whole family could do together. Some other ideas for family therapy would be to have the family talk together and to create a new game. I think this can bring up a lot, especially for the children, especially if there's more than one child, to have to come to an agreement and to talk through that, having, new rules for this game. But I think it could also be a time to really connect. And then it's like you have a special game for that family, and it's their game, right, that they created together. Next is a mirroring activity. And this is where you would instruct family members to choose a leader. So one family member is the leader, and then someone else is the follower. So I've also done this with, a family of 4 or however many. And if there's an odd number, you just team them up together, and one person's the leader, maybe a couple are the followers. And so one person's usually the leader and one is the follower, and the leader is moving their hands. Usually it's just their hands, otherwise it gets a little bit too intense for especially young kids to follow. But they'll move their body, and then you are also, the follower is moving in the same way. So try to mirror, right? It's like as if you had a mirror in front of you. That's why it's called mirroring activity.
One thing, if it's okay, that you could do there, so just keeping in mind that you're not going to be there to create the containment and to create therapeutic presence. And so your leadership and your planning ahead of time and creating structure is what's going to help it feel more therapeutic and more connected. So with a mirroring activity, maybe you pick some music ahead of time, maybe something a little slower or maybe something fun that you'll play. So you're setting the tone. You're letting them know unconsciously, I've got you. I've got the structure, I've got you. So maybe you play a little music and you tell them, and then you structure it, right? So you tell them, okay, you guys are gonna stand in a circle, make sure you can all see each other's eyes, right? Or if it's just 2, you're gonna stand facing each other, make sure you can see each other's eyes. And then when the music starts, so-and-so is going to be the leader and everyone else is going to follow. And then you tell them when to switch, or maybe it'll happen organically. But just with all of these activities that you have to bring more pristine structure and to really plan it ahead of time. So again, just choosing, 2 to 3 activities that you're going to do, and then you structure it and you communicate it and you lead them in it.
Yeah, exactly. Another idea is to have the family create an obstacle course together, out of things that they have at home. It could be anything, it could be pillows and blankets, and instruct them to create the course together, and then to cheer each other on as they try to each take their turns to get through it. It's another connecting activity that they could do. Let's see, another one is a family crafting project. So if they happen to have cardboard, I think cardboard can be used for a lot of different activities. Have them get some cardboard, and each person can create their own shield. I've had a lot of kids do this, and you could totally do this with families. And then, everyone's shield is going to look different. If they have any paint, that would be wonderful, so the kids and the adults can paint them. And then to cut them out, and then to be able to talk about how we all do things to protect ourselves, right? Especially that's really true right now, right? Like we're all trying to do things to keep ourselves safe and to protect ourselves from this virus and to keep our families safe. And so, helping them think through times and to share with each other when they felt the need to protect themselves, right? And this could be really useful anytime, and especially now.
Yeah.
Next is a puppet show. So you can have parents and their children to take turns putting on the puppet show for each other. They can use stuffies, you know, it doesn't have to be puppets. And also when you're doing like parent coaching and stuff like that, you can kind of think through with the parents ahead of time. It can be helpful sometimes to think about bringing in issues that their children are currently experiencing, right? So maybe you're also involved, right? Maybe you have a puppet and the parent wants your help to kind of have the puppets have a similar thing that's happening. And then I'll often have my puppet kind of ask for advice for my client's puppet, like, I'm feeling really, really worried right now. Like, what do you do when you feel worried? And then they have all this amazing advice to give and things that maybe I didn't even know that they knew. So it can be a really great activity for the whole family to do together. And lastly is to create a world. So you can create a rectangle out of tape on the floor, and that can represent the contained sand tray. You don't have to have sand to do this. And then have the family find things around the house or the child's toys to use as objects to create a world together. And this is something that I do for part of my intake sessions with whole family. And so having them kind of create, you could do one where there's a theme, or you could let it be really non-directive and just let them create whatever they're wanting to create. If you want it to be more directive, you could say, let's make a world with no rules, or maybe a world with many, many rules, right? And like getting them to kind of play with those different activities when creating a world.
And then you can use that world that they've created to then have them tell a story. And it can be sort of open-ended, like, okay, now you guys get to tell the story of what happens in this world. Or if they need more structure, and most families that I see do need a little more structure, you have them each say a sentence or two of something that happens and tell them, you can have the characters in the world move. So the tape. So I would have parents set this up ahead of time. I would say to the parent, we're going to do an activity, so please have some figurines or toys available, and create a rectangle with some masking tape or anything that you have, really, rulers, that's about 3 by 5. That's bigger than a sand tray, but or 2 by 3, would be actual sand tray, 2 feet by 3 feet about. So to have them set it up ahead of time, and then, and then have them each say a sentence, like, okay, this happened, and then what happened next, and then what happened next.
Yeah, and you could also use yarn, if
yes,
they don't have,
that's
yarn
a good idea.
is a really good one.
That's a good one.
They could outline the sand tray on the floor, right?
Right, good idea.
Even tape it down a little bit or something.
Good idea. Yeah, recommendations for parents. So this is, these are things that you can just give these to parents, or you can talk to them about them. The parents are really stressed out right now. So one of the things that Jerrica and I both teach is hand-in-hand parenting. And hand-in-hand parenting is an approach that teaches 5 tools. This is the book, and it's also on Audible. It's called Listen, 5 Simple Tools to Meet Your Everyday Parenting Challenges. And hand-in-hand parenting is attachment-based and backed up by trauma-informed methods of ways to engage, the emotional well-being of children and of parents, and infuse more play. So there's 5 different tools, and the first tool is listening partnerships. And what listening partnerships is a chance for parents to just take turns getting listening right for their feelings. So you set it up where one person, usually it's not the person's partner, like romantic partner, although it can be, especially right now, but they listen to one another. So you set up a time, maybe you say like, okay, I'd love 10 minutes of listening. Before we did this presentation, Jerrica and I did 3 minutes of listening. So even a very short period of time can be helpful. And, so okay, we're gonna have 10 minutes of listening each. The listener is just going to listen with empathy, not commiserate, not give advice, no advice giving, no trying to fix the solution, and just trust that the other person is working through their feelings. And then the speaker gets to talk through and cry and shake and rage about things that are upsetting to them. So it's a really good way to move the emotion that's stuck in our bodies. I've been doing a lot of listening partnerships myself these last 2 weeks, letting yourself cry, letting yourself shake about how scary things are, letting yourself, I've been kind of pounding the ground and yelling profanities at the coronavirus and the administration right now, and all my frustrations and all my fears. And when you do that, then you can think. That connection comes first, thinking follows. So, there's so much. We could do a whole training just on hand-in-hand parenting, and I have some out there, but listening partnerships is really integral right now. So that's the basics of it. If you want more information, there's this beautiful article, how to find a listening partner. If you just go to handinhandparenting.org and look up listening partnerships, you'll find out all kinds of information about what listening partnerships is, what the reasoning behind it is, and how to find one. A really good place to find them is the Hand in Hand Parents Connect Facebook group, Hand in Hand Parents Connect, and it's international. It's all parent-based, parent-run, grassroots, and people will find listening partners all over the world. I have listening partners in London, and you just hop on the phone or hop on a Zoom call with them.
Mm-hmm. And so next is helping parents to think through about just creating a daily schedule for their family right now, right? Everybody is at home in confined areas and spaces, possibly all just on top of each other. The tension might be building, right? So having a structure to their day, a schedule, right? So having walks, having, meals scheduled, their time for doing schoolwork, their academic time, having time for kids to be creative, making art, having some chore time depending on their age, and also then having the quiet time, right, where they're doing something quiet like reading, and screen time, so that way that is getting limited, right? And then even bedtime, just creating some sort of daily schedule that will be really helpful. You can kind of help them think through this, or they can think through it, with their partner, and just kind of come up with what works for their family. It'll be different for everyone, but I think having a daily schedule when feels like there's so much time, like how are we going to do this? What are the kids going to do all day, and how to navigate it? I think that really helps. And it also helps the children to know, like, this is my schedule while I'm at home for this extended period of time.
Yeah, and one great thing to do is just to get the child engaged with it. So for the parent and kid to sit down together with a piece of paper or a whiteboard and just write it out together, depending on their age, So, okay, from 9 to 10, what are you going to do at that time? Okay, how about 10 to 11? So having them to help lead it as well can help get them, connected in and engaged.
Yeah, and I mean, depending on the kid's age in school, I think setting up a little workspace or a school space for their academic time, so they have a designated area where they know this is where I'm going to do schoolwork for the next few weeks or however long it is, I think could be really helpful. Again, just kind of adding more structure to the child's day. Setting firm and loving limits with children, I think this kind of comes in with the parent coaching, providing that for parents and letting them talk through what's challenging about setting limits during this time and offering your support, and having the parents set clear expectations about this extended time at home, and I think that creating the schedule really kind of helps with that. And then, if they have limits on screen time, for example, like getting really clear. The more clear they are, the better it's going to be for everybody. And lastly is special time, which is also one of the other tools from Hand-in-Hand Parenting. And we have a little link here, but basically it's where you set a timed amount of time with a timer is always helpful, like say 15 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever time the parent can offer that day. and you tell the child that the child is in charge. You know, this is your time. We can play whatever you want, and it's the parent's job just to follow, to be 100% present, to not have any distractions, and to play with their child and to enter their world in that way. And so that builds connection, it builds warmth, and it's really playful, right? Because they're really just following their child and what they want to do. And then it stops when the timer goes off.
So especially right now, when there's so many things pulling at parents' attention, and if you're teaching parents filial or how to attune to their child in play, giving them this activity, this exercise that they can do every day. They don't have to do it perfect. They don't have to have you as a bug in their ear each time, but it can be a time for them to set aside all of their worries, to set aside the dishes, their concerns about the virus, their needing to teach them something, they put it all aside. They don't make tea, they don't check their emails, they put their phone aside. And it's a really helpful way to get back into the present moment, especially for parents, for us adults. We are afraid. We're very, very afraid, which is why having listening partnerships is important right now, to help to give parents a space to talk through their fears. And the listening partner may be you. It's not really listening partnerships, but it may be that for the first 15 minutes of the child session, you're just listening to them, and you're offering them your warm listening so they can get to their feelings, so they can express their feelings, so they're not stuck in their thinking. But that special time can be a time where they are just focusing on their child's play, and it's a type of a mindfulness, actually. So it can be very settling. So you can teach parents that, to schedule in 15 minutes a day where they're just going to follow their child's lead. So here's some other recommendations for parents. You can just give them this list, things they can do at home, for the playtime. Maybe when they're doing the schedule, it's like family playtime or child playtime. They can build a fort. You can make sensory bins together. They can paint with various household objects. You could play with the magnets on the fridge, make up your own mandala and give it to someone else to color. Board games, trash can basketball, take the bag out and, crumple up some paper and, just play basketball. A cooking contest just with the items in your pantry, especially for those of us that are, not wanting to deal with the craziness of grocery stores right now. That could be really, really helpful. And it could be a way also to help parents think through, like, wow, you're so resourceful. You thought you had nothing to eat, and then you guys made this amazing bread that you just discovered through things you had in your pantry.
Other ideas are making a scrapbook, maybe having the family make a scrapbook together, using tape to create a laser obstacle course down the hallway, and then having each of them go through the obstacle course and cheer each other on, having a dance party. Dancing it out is something that I've definitely been using a lot lately. So having that, a whole family do that together. Pillow fight, we've already said, having them play card games, board games, making homemade Play-Doh together or anything homemade, really bonding, having them make art. And then lastly, it's something that Karen found. You want to talk about it?
Yeah, just for right now, the elders who are in nursing homes and they're not allowed to have visitors, that you can have kids write, and this is something you could do in session too, but to write letters to elderly people that are in nursing homes that can't have visitors, that could be a sweet way to fill them up. I also want to say one thing about the art. If parents need a recommendation on how to help their kids be engaged, I don't remember the name of it. If you email me, I can find it. But my sister has a 4-year-old, and there's a really wonderful YouTube channel that just teaches little kids how to draw. And it's very simple. They're not selling anything, but that can be a way to help. If your child is less self-directed, then following something like that, like a YouTube channel on making art, can be a wonderful way for them to be using technology, but not on technology, as a way to keep themselves engaged, like if parents need to work. So that is all we have. So Hannah, if you have any other questions, we'd love to hear them. And, you know, for those of you watching the recording, we'd really love to hear your feedback. What other ideas do you have? What have you tried? What's working? What's not working? What do you need as far as support? You know, one of the things, I know some people are doing sort of support groups. We're thinking of leading some sort of something like that too, like a teletherapy consultation group, especially right now. So, or just a peer consultation group. So let us know your desires. Let us know your fears. Let us know your thoughts, what you try, your successes, your failures, all of it. Like, we are all in this together.
Yeah, we are in this together. So please reach out for anything that you want to share with us. We really appreciate hearing from all of you.
So hi, yes, I have one more question. What I know we're all doing what we can, and I'm thinking, do you have any advice on if I just have a parent session, what that could look like, and having the kid, I mean, I guess just knowing and being flexible if the kids are around, and, you know, being mindful of that, if you have any suggestions on
so
that.
that's something that's really important that you're bringing that up, because that's something that we actually have to be mindful of in all of our teletherapy sessions, is we don't have control over privacy. And so asking the parents if they're in a place that's private, just being a little bit more thoughtful about what we say. You know, are the kids around right now? Is it okay if I speak freely? You know, so I would, you know, ask them those things. Also knowing, you know, kind of on the same piece, some parents may be fine with you seeing into their homes, but other parents may feel vulnerable about it. So just being, you know, you might ask them, you know, what's it like to be doing this over video? How is it, you know, is there anything that you're concerned about? So inviting out those concerns. Is there anything that feels uncomfortable? You know, rolling with the resistance, as we say, you know, going into it. And then, you know, I would start with what's going well. What are the bright spots? What are the things that are the nice connection moments? And what are the things that are really hard right now that you could use support with? And starting with the frame in your mind that you're going to be offering basically listening, that they're going to, that, you know, when you ask, you know, what is it that you're struggling with? And this is true whether it's in the office or on video, that if a parent is very stressed out, they're going to have all these questions and they want a solution. It's because they're stressed out. But the first place to actually help them is to help them to get in touch with their feelings. So to not go straight to problem solving, you know, but to do more from a listening place, you know. Oh, okay, so it's hard to have a lot of people in the house right now. It sounds really, really stressful. Can you tell me more about that? Can you tell me about a moment that was really hard? Can you tell me what it was like when you were trying to work, and your child keeps barging in? What do you wish you could say? That if you could say anything and not censor yourself, and you knew that you'd be a good parent, and I think you're a good parent, and you're not going to hurt anyone, if you could just let your mind be free, what do you wish you could say to them? It's a way to kind of uncensor the places that are stuck, the rage, the frustration, the fear, the hopelessness. So getting them into their feelings. And then once it seems like they're, you know, sort of, if they're not getting to any feelings, or they're just like, yeah, we just don't know what to do, then you could explore it with them. Okay, well, tell me what happens. Let's see, are there ways that we can set boundaries? Are there ways you can, have you tried setting a structure with them? What would you see would be the obstacles to that? Like, maybe we can do it together right here, right now. Tell me, what would you could describe for them. Tell me, what would you want them to do first thing in the morning? What about second? So the way that I think about parent consults is, I want them first to be focusing on the good, because it's really easy to just focus on the bad. That's how we have survived. That's how we're surviving right now, is by knowing what's dangerous and staying away from it. But we have to work harder to focus on the positives and what we're grateful for in life. And we need to, in order to not be steeped in distressing emotions the whole day. So I think of sort of three things. One is like what's going really well. Two is letting the parents offload their feelings while I'm listening. And three is helping them think through problem solving strategies and actually being like a second brain for them. You know, that we all need someone at times to hold our hand and think through, put our heads together and see if we can figure out a way to think through what could actually help. And usually that may lead to either giving them, you know, helping them think through structures, or it may lead to, okay, well, let's try some parent coaching around parent-child play therapy. Let's do some observations. Why don't we set up a video time where I can observe what happens during bedtime or special time, and then we'll have another parent meeting. So you set up your own kind of solution thinking time. So it's like, you know, positives, emotions, thinking. That's how I think of the structure.
Yeah, and I think it's really helpful to slow things down for the parents too. Like in the moments when you're kind of trying to, like, as Karen told me before, like the devil's in the details. Like, so when you can think about, you know, okay, so just tell me like step by step, like what happens at bedtime, right? Like if maybe they don't feel comfortable with you watching what happens at bedtime, as I imagine maybe some parents will be like, no, I don't want to do that. So then it's like, okay, so what did you say? And then what were you feeling? How did your kid respond? So really slowing it down.
Yes. Yeah. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for your questions. It really helps fill in the blanks here. So for those of you watching the replay, I know I've said this a few times, but just a reminder, you know, we'll email the slide, or we'll print out the slide. We'll give you the slides. Email us if you have any questions. I'm Karen Wolfe. You can email me at karenwolfetherapy@gmail.com or find me at sfbayplaytherapy.com.
And you can also email me. You can find me at my website, which is my name. It's www.jerricadanhoff.com. My name is at the beginning of the slides. And then my email is jerricadanhoffpsychotherapy@gmail.com. So feel free to reach out with questions or comments or ideas. And yeah, I'd love to hear from you and see what you thought about this training.
Yeah, and just so, and what were the 2 or 3 interventions that you decided to use in your sessions this week? That's, I would say, use that to move forward. Okay, well, thank you all, and we are strong together, and I'm so proud of us play therapists for bringing some play and some joy and some possibility and some care to this troubling time. So love you all, and we will see you out there.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Actually.